friends, and welcome to Frantic Mama. If you haven't already checked out our other videos, feel free to do so. Also, find us on our website at www.franticmama.com. You will find lots of resources about Christian living, homeschooling, daily life. There's even a podcast for the exhausted woman. I'm sure you will enjoy them. Anyhow, so we're going to get straight to it today. So in our homeschool, I believe in having lots and lots of books. I believe it's important to enrich our child's life through literature, and good literature at that. We do have some fun books that they read just for fun, but I want them to fall in love with literature. I want them to fall in love with stories and develop into avid readers that really appreciate a good story and an excellent plot. Because often good readers can be good writers, and I'm a writer myself, so I hope that someday my children will also be writers. So in part of that, in our homeschool, we try to incorporate lots of read-alouds. During last school year, we read, I think it was about 36 different chapter books together in the classroom, and then every single night we would read 2 chapters out of a chapter book of our choice at bedtime. So the children are getting tons and tons of good stories, lots of fun. We have some inside jokes that you would only know if you had read the books. It's a little fun thing that we like to do as a family. For instance, my 8-year-old really liked The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and he was so intrigued by the character who had to say, I want more Turkish delight, and he had never heard of Turkish delight, which led us down a little rabbit trail where we got to understand and learn what that was, and hopefully we're going to get to make some so he can try it. But now, every so often, whenever something smells good or it maybe is something he's craving, he likes to say, ooh, I think I would like some Turkish delight. So it's become a fun little activity that we do together. It's brought us closer as a family. My husband's at work, so then when he comes home, they tell him all about their stories, and we've had a great time with it. At night, we like to read the Magic Treehouse series. There are some really good ones in that series of books that covers historical facts and historical events that have happened, and then we can talk about the history behind it and what really happened. They add a lot of facts throughout the story, and then at the end, the author always tells a little bit about the facts, about the true actual event that took place. So it's squeezing in a little bit of history, a little bit of fun, and then wrapping it all up in literature. So they don't even know they're actually learning extra. So that's always an added plus. So, and there's so many in that series that it's just a natural, we fell right into them, and they go in order, and you can follow one to the next. There'll be 3 in some and 4 in the other. They're a really good series of books. The boys really enjoyed them. But recently, we follow Read Aloud Revival, and if you're not a part of that community, I would encourage you to do so. They have some excellent resources on their website. They have some great encouraging podcasts. If you are a lover of books and literature and you want your children to be also, it's a great place to start. And Read Aloud Revival also has, I think it's every month they release lists of books that they suggest for read alouds. They really encourage picture book reading. So I know that when my children were little, we would read the little board books that had pictures in it, and it might have one word and a picture. So we would read through it, and my kids loved it. Well, I did not know, but there are books considered picture books, and they're for older kids, like elementary age. There are older ones even for middle school also. But right now, I have one elementary school, so I have one 3rd grader, and I have one 6th grader. So, but the 6th grader can kind of come down and the little one can kind of come up. So we sort of meet in the middle when I pick our resources. So the read aloud book that we have done, we just did this one, was Home in the Woods. And it is so good. And it's by Eliza Wheeler. And it was just so amazing to read this book with my children. And it has some little, it has pictures, and it doesn't have that many words. It's not a very wordy book. That's what makes it so fun. So as you see, that's about the extent of the words. But it has some really, really awesome photographs and pictures in here that you can just, without even reading the little captions, you could actually kind of guess or tell what was happening in the story. It's so well written, and it is well illustrated. And so it really was great, because when you read this book, and a lot of books that are on the Read Aloud Revival, you'll find it's really good illustrations, and the content is really deep in the fact that you can actually it brings on other conversations. So what a picture book is meant to do is capture their attention and then engage them. And once they're engaged, is to spark conversation. So for instance, in this particular book, we had conversation sparked about poverty, because it is about a family that goes and lives in a shack that's in the woods. We had to talk about death. The father has just passed away, which perpetuates this whole story of poverty and hardship, but how they interact as a family. So we talked about being a family through hard times. There's a list in here where it talks about the chores that they had to split out, and my children have a few chores. So when they went and saw it in this book, they realized that their chores are quite different, where maybe I say they have to do laundry, and it's just a matter of removing the laundry from the washing machine into the dryer. Back then, they had to actually hang them up on a clothesline. So we talked about that. We talked about that they were heating their house with a potbelly stove, and here we heat with electric. We talked about the Great Depression. This is the time period that this story takes place, and it's based on an actual family, actual events that took place. And so it was really cool for them to be able to say, what was the Great Depression? And then we could go into some detail about that. We could go into detail about how neighbors help neighbors. And we talked a whole bunch about the bartering system and what how that was so successful during that time period. And how, what if we had to do that again? What could we barter? What would we have that other people might want? So it sparked conversation that was so enriching, and it went so much further than just literature. We went into history, we went into economics, we went into a lot of things, culture and politics, and everything like that was just sparked through this one book. And so it was amazing. So if you are not a part of Read Aloud Revival, I encourage you to, at the very least, get a subscription to their mail list so that you can get the monthly book list that they suggest, because they are all so good. I found these at the library. My bookshelves are busting at the seams, so I have promised myself to buy as few books as possible this year. Instead, we're going to borrow them and then turn them into the library so that we don't have such an excess of books taking over in our homeschool library and in my personal library. So that was the next thing. The next book that we read that was suggested, or that we are reading, is David Copperfield. So it has short little chapters, easy to understand language. It's written by Charles Dickens, of course. So it is super easy to understand. It's just super engaging. The story is so interesting, and the children are so amazed that it is a true story. And then the pictures are just black and white, which you would think would not captivate, but it did, because the storyline is so rich with detail that the lack of color in the photos didn't seem to faze them. They were able to visualize what they needed to, and the pictures made sense when we went over them. So already we just started today, and we are already on chapter 6. So we read 6 chapters today, and it was a breeze. You know you have how do you pick a good read aloud book? And is it okay to stop in the middle? So I want to go down that little trail for a minute. The way you pick a good one is, does it have easy to comprehend and understand words? But it does have some length in the chapters, because it takes you a minute to allow the character to develop within your imagination. So little short kiddie books aren't going to be great read aloud books if you're really wanting to engage your children. You want some books that have chapters in them, and that the chapters are not excessively long, But like I said, the language is really easy to understand. And it's always great if you can find a chapter book that actually has pictures, because all kids like pictures. Even my 6th grader, he can imagine what is in the book and what the stories are talking about, but he likes to have that reassurance that he was imagining correctly, right? So it throws in a little extra when you have some pictures located throughout the different chapters. But as you're reading, I would say within the first 3 chapters, if they have not started asking you questions about the story, or even mentioning it and talking about it later in the day after you've begun it, then it may not be the best chapter book for you, or the best read aloud. It may be a good independent reader for one of the children to read just by themselves, but perhaps it's not best read in the group out loud. Maybe it's just not. So I always evaluate within the first 1, 2, or 3 chapters. You can tell we love Hank the Cowardly. I think it's Hank the Cow Dog. Yeah, Hank the Cow Dog. We have read those series also, and right away you read it in a country accent. You can add little frills to it as you go. And within the first chapter of all of those books, they were sold, and they were in, and they were ready. We have had some books that we've tried to read and we had to stop, and we walked away from them. In the Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, they loved it. The next book that came after, they loved it, but then the 3rd book, they did not love it. So there's a series of those by C.S. Lewis, and they didn't love it. So we stopped. We're taking a break. We will go back and revisit it later, but right now we stopped. I also like to find read-alouds that have movies or something that goes along with it. And I never let my children watch the movie first and then read the book. We always read the book first and then we watch the movie next, because it's important for them to imagine what the characters look like on their own. If you watch the movie first, they're going to put in those pictures that are imposed on them from the movie. So it's better to allow them to exercise their own creativity without limitations. And it's okay that if you start a book and it doesn't work, that you stop and move on. Totally okay. And you have to know your audience anytime you're picking a book. So when you are going through the library, we go online and I type in maybe a subject. I look at book lists that are suggested, and then I go through and I read the prologue. I read a little bit about what the book is supposed to be about. I think about the time period the book was written in. Does it correlate with something we're learning in history, or maybe something that we have seen in the news lately? So we always try to connect so many things outside of just reading with reading, right? You want to be able to connect your other subjects and bring your education for your children into a full, complete circle. So just because I'm doing a read aloud doesn't mean I'm not covering history, that I'm not covering science, that I'm not covering economics, that I'm not covering even world history sometimes. So you want to think about those things. We've had some books that even covered a little bit of math, and we could go into about some math issues. So that is what we have found has been the most successful and the most helpful. So I hope that this helps and encourages you, and I hope you get started very soon on your newest read aloud, and I hope that you find some fantastic picture books soon.